on Shabbos right there.
Okay, hope you guys are all doing well. We are learning Maseches Avodah Zara Daf Mem Vav, and we're starting 8, 9 lines down. Tani Tana Kamidur of Sheshes. The Gemara says, quoted in a brisa. This is actually not a brisa; it's technically a Tosefta. The Tosefta says, "Ha'akum ha'ovdem es ha'harim es ha'gvos." So you have a guy; he makes a religion out of a mountain, and all of a sudden, top of Mem Vav Amud Aleph, 8 lines down. All of a sudden, this guy starts bowing down to what is the ha'harim and the gvos. So what's the halachas? It says the Gemara, "Hein mutarin." The mountains and the gvos, the harim and the gvos are mutter. The yid's allowed to use them. There's no isur hanar. You can't make a mountain into a chefetz of Avodah Zara, ve'ovdehen b'sayif. And the goy who did the Avodah Zara, he gets sayif. This is something we learned a while ago. Rashi reminds us of the Gemara in Sanhedrin, second line, Dibur Maschel ve'ovdehen b'sayif. Dibnei Noach nitztavu al avodas kochavim b'Sanhedrin. Ve'aminan hasam kol misa ha'amur levnei Noach eno el sayif. So therefore, because the Akum does Avodah Zara, that's something that everyone in the world should be able to come to terms with, that it doesn't make sense to do Avodah Zara, and a goy is held accountable. That's the first shtickle in the Kovetz Ma'amar of Rabbi Chanan Wasserman speaks about this. How can you expect a goy to know? Because if you have a shtik seichel, you should know that you're davening to a deity that's a rock. Pasha makes no sense. You should know. Anyways, Uvdein B'sai. What if they're bowing down to seeds and to vegetables, low-level things? So then those who become chefses shel iser, hein aser and v'ovdein b'sayif, same consequence. So the people in the room who were listening to Rav Sheshes quote this brisa, Amar Lady said to Amar Lachmani, whose shita are you quoting? You the Amora Rav Sheshes. Who are you quoting? He said Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda Hida Amar Ilan Shanatu V'Sof Avdu Aser, that if you have a tree and afterwards it was served, then it's going to be usr. And that was why he made a distinction, Rav Sheshes, between mountains and vegetation. Because as we had learned, that everyone agrees if a tree is planted l'shem avodah zara that it's usr. And here, this Baal avodah zara went and he was nevad. He served a piece of grass. He served my front lawn. So then the Gemara says that guy is going to be usr. That's Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. Why don't we establish this brisa, not this brisa, excuse me, this case of Reb Sheshes where he says by the Zeraim and the Irakos, why don't we say that they were planted that way? Perhaps this statement of Reb Sheshes is not Reb Yossi Reb Yehuda. And when the Memra of Reb Sheshes says that he served the Zeraim and he served the Irakos, that the reason why they're usher is because they were planted for that purpose. Says the Gemara, Lo Sal Kadaitach. You should not make such an assertion. Why not? Diktani Dumya Dahar. What we had learned in the Tosefta that Rav Sheshes quoted was that the two things have a similarity. The fact that both things were taught in the Tosefta, the person serving the Harim and the Gvos, and the person serving the Zeraim and the Irakos, there must be a commonality to them. Mahar Shalom Natum Itchila Lekach. Just like when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the mountains, they weren't created for Avodah Zarah Pasha. That should be obvious. Af Nami, so too the vegetation Shalom Natum Itchila Lekach. End of the first little chunk of Gemara for today. Good. Itmar, the Amoraim have a conversation. Avnei har shenedaldalu. What about rocks? Let's say there's an avalanche. Achmana litzlan. Let's say there's an avalanche of rocks. There's an earthquake and rocks break off of the mountain. They used to be part of the mountain. They used to be, I think, all rocks. I don't know how it works. I presume all rocks were at one point attached to a mountain. That's bad. That's ridiculous. You got it. That's exit worthy. You're worried about me starting late. Unbelievable. So says the Gemara, Avne Harshen Adaldalu. Let's say that there are some rocks that break off of the mountain. How do we treat them? Do we treat them like the mountain that can't become a chefsa shel isra of Avodah Zara? Or do we treat them like metaltalin that can become a chefsa shel isra of Avodah Zara? Great question. So this is a machlokes amorim, b'nei Reb Chia, the sons of Reb Chia who were Chizkiah and Yehuda. We're going to get back to these names, in particular the name of Chizkiah a little bit later in the Amud. So the children of Rav Chia, Chizkiah and Yehuda, they argued with Rav Yochanan. Chad amar asuros, v'chad amar mutaros. One of them held that rocks that separated from the rock formation are going to be asur if they're served, and the other are served by as avodah zarah, and the other held that it can't become asur. My time of demand Amar Mutaros. What's the shita? Why is it that we would have been lenient? The opinion in the Amoraim that says that you can't make a chefsa shel iser out of a rock. It's interesting because, like, when I think of like an avodah zara, I think of a rock that's carved with a face and whatever other nuance. That's what I would have assumed. So here we see there's taka machlokas amoraim if it can even become a chefsa shel avodah zara, because its initial form was mountain. It's fascinating. My wife and I were in Mexico a couple of years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, and one of my sons at that time was into chess. I don't think he's touched a chessboard ever since then, including the gift we bought him, which was a little ungrateful. And then later I looked at all the chess pieces, and every last one of them was carved out of stone, and every last one of them was pashut avodah zara mamish. It looked like it wasn't because it wasn't the shame about it, but it smacked like it didn't. Probably shouldn't have bought it. Anyways, so let's say that someone had worshipped that. So I would have assumed out of the gates without this daf, pashut it's avodah zara. No, it's machlokas somewhere. It could be that it's totally mutter to use to play chess even. No problem. So my time of demand damar mutaros. What is the reason for the opinion that the loose rocks that are served they can still be used and you can't turn them into a chefza shel avodah zara kehar because there's a similarity to mountains like we saw in the Tosefta. Mahar she'ein bo tfisa asyadei adam umutar. Just like a mountain, no human can plant a mountain. You can't move a mountain, apasha. You can't do anything to a mountain except for break it. Afhani, the same is true with broken rocks. You can't make a rock. You can't do that. You have no impact on rocks other than changing their size and their shape. But be'etzem, the fact that they're a rock remains unchangeable. And therefore, they're similar to the har, and therefore, you cannot make it a chefza, shel avodah zara, even if you worship it.
But every single avodah zara, like you said, every single idol, or emperor, Baal, is made out of rock.
Or wood.
But a shiur tree, okay, fine.
But we learned about trees that if a tree is planted, this is the machlokas we saw yesterday. So it could be taka that a lot of them are made out of wood, but stone would fall to this machlokas.
The ramifications of that are pretty significant.
Well, I mean, the practical ramifications are really more for when you have a mitzvah to destroy avodah zara, like going into Eretz Yisrael and kibbutz.
When Avram Avinu was breaking all the avodah zara,
yeah,
they're all wood.
Yeah. It had to be wood, and that also means that's how we paskin by wood. Is that we paskin like Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who is the das yachid. It's correct. There are nafkaminas in regards to how we would treat it, because again, if it's mutter, then you're allowed to use it. I can play chess with the avodah zara set, no problem. It just we're so like strong about avodah zara when we talk about it. We're like very stark about it, but it's we don't know what we're talking about. We're talking about a lot of things we don't know what we're talking.
Island off of South America with all those like big. No. That's.
You are. I can picture it.
You know what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you're. Easter Island.
Island.
Why do you know that? What are the name of the statues? They have a.
So those statues are not. From like 60 years ago.
You're like 8 years old. How old are you? And so why do you have references from 60 years ago? We have the only person who's 60 in this room. You're not 60. It's my dad. You're welcome. Got you in the big 50s, huh? I'm almost joining you. I got a few years left in my 40s. So there are the name of the statues. I can't remember. It's going to bother me. I'll scream it out later. What? Stonehenge. Thank you very much. Yeah, Stonehenge.
Stonehenge's in Britain.
What is the Easter Island?
No, the Easter. It's with an M. No. Stonehenge is in England.
Oh.
The Easter Island has the.
I thought that was Stonehenge. That's what I was chasing in my head. Yeah, the standing things.
Yeah, no. These are
the circle shape. Was that Stonehenge?
Yes,
yeah. But I didn't know that's what it was. But either way, they moved it and they reshaped it. So that's what the machlokas says. Do we say kehar or do we say it's not kehar, but rather it's metaltal? So this shita says it's mutter because ein behen tfisas yad. Asks the Gemara, the Bam Kasha, and this whole sugya. This is huge. Says the Gemara halfway down on Mem Vav Med Aleph. Wait, malahar shekain mechubar. This is the klutz kasha. The whole thing should be predicated on this.
No, called the Easter Island statues.
It's very boring and it's anticlimactic. That was nothing special.
South American name too, but
okay. But for the American speaker, it's Easter Island statues.
Nice.
Boring. Very impressive. Okay, so says the Gemara, Malahar Shekain Mechubar. Look, I understand you want to make a comparison between rocks that have fallen from the mountain and the mountain itself, but Tachlis, I can pick the rock up. We have people who have rocks in their gardens. You go to the cemetery, there's rocks. People put them on the headstones. Rocks are not Mechubar. So the Gemara says that's a problem. Says the Gemara, don't worry. Behema tochiach. Behema is not mechubar, and a behema that was worshipped also doesn't become usher, and they can still be used. That's what Rashi says. Sorry, Tosfos says Dibra Maschil behema tochiach pirush de'afilu behema atzma einu ne'eseres lahedjot im lo asa b'maisa. If you only worshipped it without touching it, if you touched it and you did something, that's different. Anyways, the Gemara says behema tochiach. I can prove to you that a behema, which is metaltalin, is not going to become a chefza shel iser, so too by the free rock. Says the Gemara, well, ma lebehema shekain balas chaim, but the rocks are not alive and the animals are alive, so they're really not comparable. Says the Gemara, har yochiach, don't worry, the mountain is metaltalin and not alive. And says the Gemara, b'chazar hadim, we now use these two things to create a positive cyclical logic. Lo re'izeh ki re'izeh, behema is not like har is not like behema. Lo rizek rizet. What are the common denominators of behema and har? Shein ben tfisas yad adam. No one can create rock. No one can create animal. Great shaila for a great shaila for Dali from our era of cloned animals. The chor, there is tfisas yad by cloned animals, and because there's tfisas yad, you could not say by an animal that was created by man. You cannot say that it's metaltalin and it's not going to become asr. By definition, it will become asr, just like planting a tree.
Unless that animal is not a normal animal. And I don't know what the halachic.
What does that mean?
Because an animal implies one that was.
No, it doesn't matter what it is. The fact that that there's tfisas yad that I can create, I could take clay and shape it, and then it's tfisas yad. It's going to be Avodah Zara. Oh, not true. Okay, I hear what you're saying.
By doing that.
What?
I don't know.
I make a rock by doing that.
Can't make a rock.
They make bricks all the time.
That's not rock.
But it's
We're going to talk about bricks later.
You see, you take clay and it hardens, it becomes a rock.
That's not rock. That's not rock. The Gemara is saying rock is like part of a mountain. It's not. It's not. That can't be recreated. But maybe you're right, David. Maybe.
I have no idea, but
I have no idea.
Fascinating.
But by the way, if that's true what you're saying, then they'd be parv. Right. Is a ben pakua parv? I don't think so. I think they're still flesh. Yeah. I told you this. One of my friends wanted to open a restaurant called Ben Pakua Burgers. He wanted to shech the mother right before the animal was born, and then birth the animal and made it with another Ben Pakua, and they never need shchita because they were nishchad b'mei imo. Just shtick.
Yeah, saying I don't really care whether you share as long as it's on the shelf in Romania. I'm good.
Yeah.
Could
Could you imagine it says no shchita?
It would feel disingenuous, you know? I want to know I'm eating meat, but I'm eating meat.
It's mutter. It's still meat. It's just no shchita.
I'm saying for the lab room.
Oh,
I'm saying back.
you're going to the Impossible Burger problem. That's doesn't work for you, huh? You're a carnivore.
I need to wait 6 hours.
If you're eating meat and you're a herbivore, and if you're herbivoring while you're eating meat, something's wrong. Hey, that I agree to. Burgers don't taste good. I don't think I've ever had a whole burger in my entire life. Let's talk about important things. Says the Gemara that this is the tzara shava shebehen she'en ben tfisas yad adam u'muter af kol she'en ben tfisas yad adam u'muter. This svara is quoted in the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Mem Hein Yerodea. So this is just a good klal. If there's something that there's no tfisas yad adam, you can't make it into a chefza of Avodah Zara. Something that is natural can't be made into a chefza shel Avodah Zara. Tree might be the exception because it could be that even if it was planted l'shem shamayim, but it was nevad, that's a machlokas or Yossi Aglili, right? And the chachamim. But something that has ein bahen tfisas yad adam is mutter. What are some nafkaminas? Water. No tfisas yad. Can't make water into Avodah Zara.
What about coming out of the Avodah?
What?
Like the fountains, they spit water.
The
This
water can't become Avodah Zara because there's no tfisas yad. No human can create water. But the statue could be if it was shaped and if it was like molded out of cement, whatever it is. That can be. That'll be the nafkamina. Yeah, no, these are real. We're finding the exact line in halacha, which is exactly here.
Water that's designated as holy water.
Well, it's mutter to use for us for, we'll see soon whether or not if we're using them for religious purposes, that might be problematic. But for us to bathe in it, for example, is mutter. To use it as a mikvah, something holy, that we'll see soon. Like, can you use something like a rock, which is ein ben tfisas yad? Can you use those rocks for the mizbeach? We're going to discuss that on the top of the next Amud.
People get baptized in the Jordan River, people use it as a mikvah also.
Yeah, but that's mutter for other reasons too, which is that water is mashuch. That water never stops. That's also not avodah zara. The act of baptizing is not them serving water. They're using it for religious purposes, what they call it, but that's not what we would call avodah zara.
The Nile, they use that as mamash avodah zara. Right?
Mamish.
Like that was
ein ben tfisas yad. So they can't, if it was a lake, a standing lake, it's a better case to talk about a standing lake, because when rivers are flowing, it's kind of hard to be matame the river. But if it was a standing lake, it wouldn't matter. You can still go swimming. So that's what's quoted in Shulchan Aruch as the line in the sand of that which one can make into avodah zara, that if there is no tfisas yad, then you can't make it into a chefta shel avodah zara. Says the Gemara, this common denominator that you speak of, what was the common denominator? We said ein ben tfisas yad umuter, shekain lo nishtanu mibriyasan. That maybe that's only true when its form hasn't changed, but a stone is no longer attached to the mountain. So the form has changed. So perhaps we should say that even when you say ein ben tfisas yad, that's only in as much as it's lo nishtanu mibriyasan. But if it is now modified, so that's a problem. The Gemara accepts this question and rejects our answer. And therefore the Gemara says, Ella, asimi behema ba'alas mum umehar. We learn it from a combo deal of a ba'alas mum, a behema that has a blemish, which still can't become aser. So to a rock, which is nishtanu mibriyasan, which therefore can't become aser, umehar, from a mountain like we saw before. V'inami, another case of tzara shava sheben is mi behema tama umi ilan yavesh, from those two things that also can't become tame, can't become aser. So all of this was within the camp of whether or not we say that a rock that's separated from a mountain can become aser, and that shita was mutter. Uman de asar, we're 2/3 of the way down, 4 lines before the wide lines, according to the one who says that the freestanding rock from the avalanche can become aser. Isn't that this upcoming week's parsha? I don't know. Shnai Mikra is elusive.
No,
Okay.
it's fair Zion.
Wow.
Well, that's what our scroll says.
Oh.
No,
we were very.
I was very impressed. You got his plus chapter and verse, as we say. There's no Hebrew phrase for that.
Baruch Hashem, I went to Hillel Torah and I could read.
Oh, that's good, Baruch Hashem.
That's why I went to public school.
All right. Before we get denigrating of other institutions, let's continue. I do work for the ATT, and I have to. Okay. So says the Gemara. The pasuk says, "Shaketz teshaketzenu v'sa'if tesavenu da'af al gav da'asi midin l'hatera." Even though I could have come up with a kal v'chomer for leniency, even though I could have done that, which is what we just did above in the mutter category. We said it has to be like, the tzara shava sheben shein ben tfisas yad. So it says the Gemara, lo tesia. We should not learn out a kula in this case. We should not try to be mekel in this case. So now we said this machlokes between these two Amoraim, the one shita that said that rocks remain mutter even when they're served, or rocks can become aser. We said that machlokes was between the children of Chizkiah, the children of Chia, which is Chizkiah and Yehuda on the one side, and Rav Yochanan on the other. Tistayim, says the Gemara, Dibnei Reb Chia desharu, that the first shita was that of Reb Chia's sons. Why? The boy Chizkiah, who was Reb Chia's son. That's why the family trees are helpful. And thank God the Gemara gave this one away. The boy Chizkiah. Zokaf Beitza, which is a darga. If somebody stands up an egg vertically, that is impressive if you don't have a stand of some kind. But let's assume there's a stand because this isn't a magic trick. So let's say somebody takes an egg that normally lie flat because of gravity and they stand it up the tall way. So it says the Gemara, if a yid is zakaf beitza, lishtachavosla, to bow down to it, mahu. It says the Gemara, kasal kadaitach, I would have thought, I assume right now, that the case of Chizkiah's question was, not only did you set it up to bow, but you actually did the bowing. The kamiboile, and the question that we're asking is, Hai zikifasa, ihavamaisa, ilohavamaisa, whether or not the act of standing up the egg mattered. Aval lo zakaf lo mitzera, but had it been that you didn't touch the egg and you worshipped it, it wouldn't have become aser. My time, Shma Mina says the Gemara that Bnei Reb Chia Desharu, that Reb Chia holds that it would be mutter in that case without touching it, and that seems to indicate that if you don't touch the rock, the Medul Dal rock, the rock that fell from the avalanche, if you don't touch it, if you don't move it, so then it's going to be mutter. By the way, just going back to the point I made earlier and flipping it on its head, that according to this, the only time we would say a rock is not subject to Avodah Zara is when you don't move it, which is why I'm pushing back on myself just to show you how the Shakla Bataria, that maybe that chessboard could be Avodah Zara, if in fact it was Ne'evad. Because when do we say a rock is not a problem? That's when it wasn't, when you didn't touch it, when you didn't move it, when you didn't do a ma'aseh to it. But if you shape it, if you pick it up, if you move it, if you position it a certain way, so then it could be problematic.
That's why you're sending it, isn't
Yeah, no, it's stark.
Or maybe even
Absolutely.
checkmate.
Oh God.
it? A for effort.
Okay, good. No, not bad. That one was not bad. Says the Gemara that maybe we should say that the lenient shita is that of Reb Chia's kids, the Bnei Reb Chia. Says the Gemara, lo. L'olam eimelach b'nei Reb Chia de asre. Maybe they agree, even with Reb Yochanan, that they can become aser. Dehishtachavala, that perhaps Hitaka did bow down to the egg, but afal gab de lo zakva and asura. Maybe the case of Chizkiah's question was where he bowed down to the egg without moving it. And what is that? What are the details of the case? Who did the bowing? Says the Gemara Kagon. Shezakaf beitza lishtachavosla. The yid stands up, the beitza. Velo hishtachabala, but he never bowed down to it. Uleman, who does this work according to? And we're going to see the following machlokas, the one we're about to learn. We'll see it down the road. Leman de amar avodas kochavim shel Yisrael asura miyad asura. According to the Shita, who says that even when a Jew simply sets up Avodah Zarah, it becomes Asur right away, so then that makes sense. Ilaman de Amar Ad Aved, if you want to say that only after the Yid does the actual Avodah Zarah, does it Asur the egg, Halo Palcha, all he did was set it up. He didn't do any Shtachavoya, no libations, whatever Avodah they did. So says the Gemara, you're right, good point. That's going to be difficult to plug it into that machlokes. So therefore, the Gemara says, Lo nitzrucha. What then was the question of Chizkiah? Says the Gemara as follows, 5 lines from the bottom. Kigon shezakaf beitza lishtachavosla. The yid stands up the egg vertically. Velo hishtachavala. He did nothing other than that. All he did was stand up the egg. Uba ove kochavim lishtachavala. And then a goy comes along, sees the egg standing there. And of course, he's crazy. He thinks that it's a deity. All of a sudden, he's like, this Beitza is my deity. And all of a sudden, he starts worshiping it. V'chiha de Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Yisrael, this is the same idea found with another object. Yisrael shezakaf levena lishtachavosla. If there's a yid that takes a brick and instead of laying it down horizontally, he stands it up vertically. Uba'ove kochavim lishtachavosla asura. And become a boile. What was Chizkiah's question? Levain, well, it wasn't Chizkiah, but it's the same din as Chizkiah. It's Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Actually, the Gemara corrects it to Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, which is, as we've said many times, that Rabbi Yehuda was the only one, I think he was the only one who learned in both Batei Medrash of Rav and Shmuel. So here is a correction that it wasn't a din of Shmuel. And the Gemara says that in such a case, what was the question? Leveinahu de minkaraz kifasa. The fact that the brick was sitting the way that it was made it recognizable. Abal beitza lo, but maybe an egg is not so recognizable. Odilma loshna, or maybe that's not true. Teku. After all of that, we don't know. We don't know what the din is in this case. The final case was where a yid sets it up. Yid does not do Avodah Zara. The goy does Avodah Zara. The question is it valuable that he set up the egg? Yes or no? And we don't know the answer to that question. As mentioned. What? What?
Teku on Tisha B'Av.
Teku on Tisha B'Av stuff. That's correct. The Gemara now gives another discussion, all connected, and this was the one I had foreshadowed a little bit earlier. Last line of Memvavim and Aleph. If somebody does take a bow down to a mountain, and then they hew stone from the mountain for the sake of the Beis HaMikdash, avanav mahu lemizbeach. If I can cut stone in order to use it for the mizbeach, but somebody used it for Avodah Zara, is that mutter? It says the Gemara, do we say that there would be a problem of something that was ne'evad, that was mechubar, which is that's a shtekol chiddush, right? It's mechubar l'karet. And we said earlier that there's no problem in using it. You can't make a mountain aser. But do we have a different standard for the mizbeach? Or ein ne'evad b'mechubar eitzel gavoa or not? Or do we say that it's mutter even by the Beis HaMikdash, even by the mizbeach, because after all, you can't make a mountain into Avodah Zara.
But you couldn't use metal anyway for the mizbeach.
Yeah, we would use the shamir. You'd use the worm to cut the rock.
But
We're not talking about that. We're talking about if a goy, I guess, or a yid, serves a mountain as Avodah Zara, even though in general the mountain can't become Avodah Zara because ein ben tfisas yad, the human has no control over it. Pasnisht, you're going to use that for the Beis HaMikdash. Of what?
Eitzel gavol, you're dealing with things.
Pasha, yeah.
Is there a higher standard?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. That's the first line of Yesh Ne'evad b'Mechubar Eitzel Gavo. We are concerned about that which was worshipped. Oh, do we say no? There is no different standard. Ein Ne'evad b'Mechubar Eitzel Gavo. That they're at the end of the day, still a rock. You still can't make it into anything. And after the pasnished feeling that we have doesn't make it real. Just sometimes we feel things are pasnished and we're right. Sometimes we're wrong. And look at this. Even if you want to say it's usher, even if you want to say that pasnish, you should not be using a rock, a hew rock that somebody served for Avodah Zara. But would we then say would we say that here it's not so bad because machshire korban ke korban dama olo? Would we say that which is enabling to bring a korban, is that problematic or not? In other words, because the actual ikar avoda is the bringing of the hakrava of the korban, and the mizbech upon which the korbanos are brought are a machshir to the korban, would we say that even if you want to hold in general that hewn stone can't be used for certain things, but it can be used to be machshir? No problem. Machshir the mizbech. I don't even know what the example would be to say that you can't use it. Because if you say that this is okay, that machshirei korban are not kekorban, then anything in the Beis HaMikdash should be good to go. Don't know.
Like they're making them up to.
But
I knew it was a matter of time.
This has got to stop. This is unbelievable. Oh, where's my dad for the corny jokes? Dr. Karesh, you're
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chuck,
if you're getting a chuckle out of the old man, you did a good job. You did. As my dad would say, that's not punny. Yeah.
I praise right there. That was another joke, by the way.
Nicely done. Okay. Says the Gemara, you guys need to stop talking. Yeah, just moratorium on table 2, please. Okay, says the Gemara, so how do we answer this question about machshirei korban? Do we say the machshirei korban are kekorban or not? Namely, can we use rock that was serviced for the mizbeach? Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, 4 lines down on Memvav Medbeis Kal V'chomer. And now we're going to be talking about Rahman al if a person is using the services of a zona and he pays her with an esnan, which is whatever gift he gives her. Uma esnan, if there is a gift that he gives her, shemuter betalush lahedyon, that if the item that he paid her with is talush, and the person using it is a hedyot, so then the item be'etzem is not aser. You can use it for other purposes. Aser b'mechubar legavoa, but by the esnan, if that which he gave her as payment for her services was mechubar, that would not be allowed. Let's say he gave her a parcel of land, that would not be allowed for the gavoa. After all, where do we know this from? Dichsiv lo savi esnan zona umechir kelev, and really the next part of the pasuk that isn't in the Gemara is what we need. Beis Hashem Elokecha, beis, bayis, a house, terra firma. That's where it would be aser. And says the Gemara, loshna talush v'loshna b'mechubar, that when it comes to that which is for gavoa, we don't care if it's mechubar or not mechubar. Loshna talush loshna mechubar. Then that's by esnan. That's by paying a zona. Nevad, which is a higher level, because she'aser b'talush lahedyon, then because something's portable, that would be completely aser, even for a hedyot. Eino din she'aser b'mechubar legavoa. Then that means that this mountain, which we now cut and turned into rocks for the mizbech, pashut, that would be aser. So that's the kal v'chomer that Rava wants to put forth. Then the Gemara says, Amar le Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yoshua Rava ochiluf. I could absolutely flip the kal v'chomer in a completely different direction. How so? Quarter of the way down. We're probably going to get to most of the way down. I was planning to go to the top of the next summit, but the clock is on, so we'll see how far we get. Says the Gemara, ochiluf, let's reverse things. Uma ne'evad. If something was worshipped for Avodah Zara, she'aser b'talush eitzel hedyot, muter b'mechubar legavoa. We start from the other side. We start from ne'evad. The previous kal v'chomer started from esnan. Now we're starting from ne'evad. So if we start from ne'evad, and perhaps we would say by ne'evad that a portable item would be aser even for a hedyot, and that which is mechubar is muter even for gvoa, why would we be able to say that which is mechubar legvoa, that which is mechubar is muter legvoa? Because shnemar lo hehem al heharim, and this was a drasha we saw already, that velo heharim Elohehem, it's not the mountains that become gods, veloshna lehejot, veloshna legavoa, that when it comes to that which is mechubar, it's completely muter. Then esnan, shemuter b'talush lehejot, then the gift that one gives to a zona, which is muter to be used, eino din shemuter b'mechubar legavoa, pashat that the esnan should be allowed for gavoa. So we completely flip the kal v'chomer in the other direction. And that's a problem because the reason why we had said that that something which was ne'evad but mechubar is aser for gavoa was based on the pasuk of Beis Hashem Elokecha. So it says the Gemara, "V'imishum Beis Hashem Elokecha." Don't worry, those words don't teach us that it's aser to use hewn stone from that which was served for the Beis HaMikdash, even if it was mechubar. That's needed for something else. Miboyle lichidetanya Beis Hashem Elokecha. We have two completely different limudim from this pasuk. One is prat lepara she'eina ba'al labayis tivi Rabbi Eliezer. This is shocking. If a para aduma was worshipped as an idol, the halacha is you can still use it as a para aduma. Why? Because the shechita of the para aduma is not in the Beis HaMikdash. It's outside of the eastern gates. We still remember our Lord learned this in Maseches Tamid. It was at a height where you can still see the heichal. Was the door high enough that you could see under? Was the door low enough that you could see over? This was a discussion there that we saw. But because the para aduma was shechted outside of the Beis HaMikdash, even if someone made the para aduma worship chapel, it doesn't matter. That animal can still be used as a para aduma. And conversely, the exact opposite type of limud, the Chachamim Omrim, that Beis Hashem Elokecha is not a prat, it's not an exception to, but it's l'rabos to include as harikuim. We know that there were rikui hamizbeach, that the parts of the Beis HaMikdash were covered in like hammered gold, and they made sheets out of the gold. I don't know if they were hammered, but they were certainly gold, and they were coverings. So that is l'rabos, that if those were served, they cannot be used. That's part of the Isser. So therefore, don't worry about the Beis Hashem Elokecha drasha, at the end of the day, we could come up with an inverted kal v'chomer, and perhaps the assumption of Rava that there's a kal v'chomer to say that it's going to be usher to use rocks that were served for Avodah Zara. Maybe not. Maybe that's not the case. So says the Gemara, Amar Le, the Gemara says back to Rav Huna, the Gemara says, Ana ka'amina l'chumra v'at amris l'kula. How can you give a kula? Kula b'chumra, when we have a kal v'chumra that can be learned either as a kula or as a chumra, the chumra parchinan. If you have a flippable kal v'chomer, one pathway is aser, a chumrah, one pathway is mutter, we always take the strict path with a kal v'chomer. This is a sugya. Why is that true? But we're not going to talk about that now. This says the Gemara, Amar le Rav Papa le Rava, are you sure you're even right about that? That whenever we have a kal v'chomer that can be either a chumrah or a kul, that we always follow the chumrah? I'll show you a case where that's not true. I can show you that we do. Let's say that we had a case where a person was tamei meis, and in order for them to become tar, they have to go through the tara process of the paraduma. But it's Shvi'i Shel Pesach, and he has to bring his korban right now. Says the Gemara, what do we do in such a case? The pligi Rebbe Elazar Rabbi Akiva. Do we violate an Isser Derabanan and do the Tara process, right? We don't take things to the Kelim Mikvah on Shabbos. It's Makev, Patish, whatever the Isser is. It's like Tikkun Manas, Tikkun Adam, to make them Tahor on Shabbos. Tahor, not like Shabbos Mikvah like we do. That doesn't, from a Tumah perspective, that doesn't change things in a drastic way. But here, when you go from Tamei Meis to not tamei meis, that's a big deal. So a ben adam who's tamei meis is not supposed to go to the process of, okay, so now it's the last opportunity to bring the korban. What are you supposed to do? It's Shvi Shal Pesach. We got to get the korban in. What should we do? Can we do the Tara process? This is a machlokas. To Rabbi Eliezer Savar L'chumra V'kam Chayav Le'Legavra. He is machmir on the korban Pesach and says the guy has to go through the process. So we're machmir on korban Pesach. We're makil on the process of Tara. We make him go through it. Rabbi Akiva L'kulo Patar. Rabbi Akiva is makil on korban Pesach, and he says, "I'm sorry, you're not allowed to break Shabbos." So we see from over here that Rabbi Akiva himself says that we're makil even in a kal v'chomer. V'kaparach Rabbi Akiva L'kula. Ditznan. How do we know that Rabbi Akiva was going to be makil here? Because Rabbi Eliezer had said something, and Heishi Rabbi Akiva Ochilu. Rabbi Akiva tried to flip things on Rabbi Elazar. And if you look above, it says the Polig Rabbi Elazar v'Rabbi Akiva. That was Rabbi in Talmud. It says the Gemara, Uma Haza'ah, the sprinkling process that was done with the meichatas of the paraduma, shehi mishum shvus, eino doche Shabbos. Rabbi Akiva is going to totally turn this on its head. Just like a shvus, an iser derabanan can't be done. Shchita, shida, oraisa, lo kol shekain. Pasha, you shouldn't do the korban pesach. That makes perfect sense. You're tameh. You're not allowed to do that. So what do we see from over here? We see that Rabbi Akiva was a mekel. We see that Rabbi Akiva was the one who was lenient in regards to a kal v'chomer. But you wanted to say a minute ago that when we have a chumrah and a kula, two possible paths of a kal v'chomer, that we're always machmir. Rabbi Akiva wasn't always machmir. So says the Gemara, no. Really over there was a problem. Hasam Rabbi Eliezer Gamre. Really, Rabbi Eliezer had taught a proper kal v'chomer to Rabbi Akiva. The Aiker le Talmudah. And Rabbi Eliezer had forgotten this piece of Torah that he taught. The Asa Rabbi Akiva to do something provocative, and he made a kula type of kal v'chomer only to remind him, la'ad kure, to remind him. V'hainu de Omar le, this was what Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi, al tachpireni b'shas hadin. Don't reject what I'm saying while we're talking. Kach mekubal ani mimcha. I learned this from you, that haza'ah shvus ve'enadoches haShabbos. He was saying a kal v'chomer just to raise the point. What was the point he was raising? That you can't do this Isser Derabanan on Shabbos. You're not allowed to do a Shvus on Shabbos. This comes up in Maseches Shabbos by Ridias Hapas. Can I do an Isser Derabanan to avoid you then having an Isser D'Oraisa? In general, can I do Isser Derabanan? Can I drive an electric car to a bris? Isser Derabanan for the sake of a mitzvah D'Oraisa, same thing. We have an Isser Derabanan that of doing Hazaya, of doing Hazah, to mean the tar of the person, to enable them to do a mitzvah. No, we don't do that. It's not how Jews behave. That's taka how we paskin. So Rabbi Kiva wasn't giving a real kal v'chomer. He was just trying to remind Rabbi Eliezer about what he said. We'll stop right here at Boy Rami Bar Chama, and Mir Hashem will pick up tomorrow night with yet another daf. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
So